impact on counties all across northeast Nebraska. This declaration allows state funds from the governor's emergency fund to help our communities. And so, we add Nebraska to the list of a growing number of states that have had emergency declarations this year. It's just been very, very high. And when we see this type of flooding, I realize that this is what we have and what we're going to have for a long time. It gets easier to see how eventually some areas are probably going to have to be either abandoned or you're going to have major public works going on in order to control this type of flooding that is occurring. And of course, we know the impact. And again, Nebraska's that's one of the bread baskets. There's so much that's grown there as far as food and crops, and we're seeing crop losses that are getting huge, all over the world right now. So we are going to be seeing tremendous increases in food prices and shortages. And I didn't put it in this one, but they're starting to have beer shortages. Can you imagine that? Beer shortages. But again, wheat, that's a main staple. And as I shared with you last time I went to the store, it was like $6.29 for a loaf of fully organic bread. It's going up, up, up. And in Antarctica, we have active volcano heat source discovered under the fastest moving and melting glacier in Antarctica. And if you remember one of my videos from, probably was about 6 months ago, we talked about, I think there was 91 new volcanoes discovered under the ice, mostly in West Antarctica. And still, when I read the comments, I still get here and there somebody saying, wake up people, it's global warming, it's CO2 emissions. And it's, and they'll point to the Antarctic ice. It's not. How do we get a negative 144 degree Fahrenheit reading and have ice melt at the same time? Well, the answer is volcanoes are way across the planet, and that explains everything. So the volcanoes, lava's flowing, it's melting the ice. The temperatures are cold. The Arctic ice and Antarctic, they're both getting thicker in areas where there's not volcanoes melting them. So this is what we have, and there is most definitely dangers with this, because where ice is laying on the ocean, no biggie if it melts. It will interfere with some of the flows for sure, and could interfere with currents, as the sea ice that's melting will have a slightly different salinity than the water itself, and that could change some of the patterns slightly. But the big danger is really where you have these glaciers and where you have these large bodies of ice that are on land that melt. And, heaven forbid, they melt and slide and go into the ocean. That could cause tsunamis, and that could cause huge rises in ocean level. And, that is the big fear, where we could get a lot of coastal inundation. And that could happen really, really quickly overnight with the wrong areas melting. And so, this is something that they first noticed signs of volcanic activity in 2007, verified its existence again in 2014, and then they realized just how big the extent of it is. And so they're able to trace it through helium-3, which shows up when there's a lot of volcanic activity. And the West Antarctic ice sheet is lying on top of a major volcanic rift system. But, this is saying there's no evidence of current magmatic activity. At least that's what they're saying. We shall see, though. And we don't really have accurate, at least it's not shared with the public, accurate info on the earthquakes that are going on down there. And so we don't really know exactly what is going on down there. At least the public doesn't. But it's being monitored for sure by many, many governments. And excuse me as I take some more coffee there. So when we look at it, and this says spooky coincidence. the Antarctic ice sheets are melting in the same places we found volcanoes. And there's good and bad news with this. You can see most of them are lying over here on the western sheet. The good news is if the western sheet went totally, it wouldn't raise the sea levels as much as the eastern side. And when we look at the eastern side, that's where ice is really, really building and getting thicker. The western side, as it's building, it's also getting melted from below from the volcanoes going off. But thankfully, it's the eastern side that if that did go and slide into the ocean, we'd have a lot of issues. That would give us huge sea level rises. That would flood out all the major cities on the coasts of the Atlantic, pretty quickly. And so that and Greenland are the two big ones that we have to worry about. But again, thankfully, the melting that's occurring on the eastern is right along the edges, along the rim, where we had found volcanoes as well. Thankfully, we don't see any sort of volcanic activity down through the middle of it, which would be the thing that would be the scariest scenario. Although, the western shelf could definitely raise sea level as well. So it's something to keep in mind. And it's definitely something that is a concern. And now, updating the situation in Vietnam, at least 23 killed, 11 missing after heavy rain and floods in northern Vietnam. And they've just been slammed, starting in the region on June 23rd, still continuing. We've seen tremendous landslides, tremendous flooding, washouts. We saw some excavators like this end up getting caught in a landslide and go tumbling down the mountain. A scary scenario over there, and so let's send our prayers and best wishes for them. Severe storms light up the midwestern U.S. into June, and we have seen crazy lightning. Crazy lightning storms. And just, actually here, and you see that big explosion right there, the policeman was going to get out, and he's like, I'm back in. We had here in Sarasota County one young man just crossing the street down by Siesta Key and got hit by lightning and was killed. And that was just this past weekend. And then this next video here that popped up is talking about sea lice and has been found on Florida beaches. And so that's another little plague that's coming on us. And, we have a lot of different things going on at once here. A lot of different things. So these larvae, generally 0.5 millimeter in length, can find their way into bathing suits, even passing through the mesh in some suits, and become trapped against the skin and sting. And so there's also jellyfish as well, which is to be expected. Lanes reopened on I-95 in Norwalk after flooding, and I worked right over here for years, and you can see that's I-95. That's the main road through New England, and not only through New England but on the East Coast. This is the main highway, and it was totally closed off with that flood. I've never seen that, and I lived there for 40 years, and I've never seen flooding like that up there before. Incredible. The flooding was right between exits 16 and 15. They had 2.52 inches of rain in 40 minutes. And of course, do not try to cross when you see water like that. Not a good idea. 3,300 without power in Dixon County. Flooding after the storm, and this is Tennessee. And tremendous flooding going on here as well. As you can see, this gigantic section of road washed out there. And this is what we're seeing all across the world and the country. And, we're going to have to do something about this with tremendous upgrades to infrastructure. And I'm not an engineer, so I don't know what could be done. I don't know if it's just creating new roads in some areas that we haven't had roads that aren't as prone to flooding. But we're going to be in this cycle for a while. So we're either going to end up being blocked off from each other, or we have to find solutions. and meet America's new climate normal, towns that flood even when it's not raining. As she sits there giving herself a foot soak here, and it's just incredible. So, sunny day flooding when a high tide can cause streets to fill with water. And this is pretty ominous. Rising seas. Florida is about to be wiped off the map. And let's hope not. But we're seeing this. And again, is it going to be a case where some areas are going to probably have to be abandoned? Maybe we could reclaim them later? Or we're going to have such public works on a massive scale that really should be well underway already, or should have been earlier, if we didn't have all the distraction going on. And as I've touched on before, instead of spending almost $700 billion this year on the military, when China's spending $215 billion as the number 2 country for military expenditures, and then you drop down into something like $90 billion. What if we spent like $300 billion to actually help ourselves across the country alleviate some of the disasters that are going on, or get ready for the disasters? We're not seeing that, and that's just poor planning, poor realization of what is really hitting us, and just sticking the head in the sand. And our leaders need to wake up, because we're going to have such food shortages, we're going to have such disruption to everything in normal everyday life that's coming, and it's here already, and nothing much is really getting done. This is New Zealand, and so New Zealand as well, feeling this flooding, and here there's residents that have been flooded twice in 3 months, and they're saying their lives are at risk unless a stop bank is built and the river is cleared of debris to prevent it from happening again. All around the world, we need to be proactive, and the governments are just going along doing their status quo, and it's not going to be good enough, and it's going to make the disaster so much worse. We really need to get our politicians and our leaders to wake up and to do something about it. And I already hear some of you guys saying, well, they, at the top they know what's going on, and this is part of their plan. Yeah, that probably is somewhat true, yeah, for sure, or totally true. But how about at the more local level, putting pressure and squeezing that pressure upwards, so that plans get changed, money gets diverted. And as we saw, that massive eruption of Mount Agung, which is a relatively active one, but now it's ramping up, and what it's throwing into the atmosphere, along with the big explosions that we've seen, in other places, like in Guatemala, these are really going to cool off the planet even more. So you're going to see way colder temperatures next winter than we had this year. And I was listening to family members talking about how miserable it's been up there, and even now, they're still needing to go out at night and put like sweaters on and stuff up in the Northeast. It's still kind of cool, kind of chilly. Wait till next year. Wait till next year. You're going to wish it was this year. And this is just ramping up now. Now we're starting to see more and more volcanoes go online, and bigger eruptions. And wait till we get some,
what's gonna happen?
VE5s and 6s, then, it's going to be so cold.
Everybody gonna
that we're going to look back at last year and think, that was the good old days. So we need to prepare for this, and there really is nothing being done. It's just all reactionary.
But nobody
Tropical
knows.
storm
Everybody living in this
Karoon forms in the Philippine Sea, and it's heading towards Japan
Look at
and
the
Korea.
fucking sky.
And so this is the 7th named storm
Tell
of the
me this is
2018
normal.
Pacific typhoon season. And the storm is expected to keep strengthening over the next couple days as it moves towards Okinawa and the Korean Peninsula, and that will be bringing definitely more rain and more flooding and more issues and more problems. So, as always, let's send our best intentions over there and see if we could get that thing to dissipate and to weaken. risk to the Lake Mead and Colorado River intensifying greatly, federal officials say. And this is one of the things that put my plans totally, when I was originally thinking of the Four Corners area. After seeing, what's going on with the drought there, then you got the fires there, and I just think that water is going to be a huge issue out there, a huge issue. It already is. And if things don't change out there with that, I don't know how you're going to support the population that's out there right now. One of our subscribers, who I've been in email contact with, is out that way right now, checking the area out.